about our theme about a comeback, but before we get there, you're about to experience something with Sean McDowell in the next session, where he's going to role play as an atheist with you. I'm not giving anything away. Sean and I have been good friends for a number of years. I was that atheist that he's going to role play because I became a Christian at 35. And I was the kind of guy who loved to jerk your chain, because most of the Christians I met couldn't defend themselves anyway. So it was easy. But I want you to have tools so that you aren't the easy person that some atheist is messing with. Does that make sense? I want to give you a good reason to believe that this is actually true. I want to talk to you about how to look at your Christian faith through the lens of a cold case detective. My background is that I've been doing homicide investigations in Los Angeles County for about 25 years. And most of my cases in the last, say, 10 or 12 years are just unsolved murders. There's no statute of limitation on a murder. So if you do a robbery and a few years go by, well, guess what? I can't come after you anymore because the statute of limitations has expired. But that's not true for murders. These things stay open. If you've watched Dateline, you'll probably have seen some of the cases that we're going to talk about, because all of my cases ended up on Dateline. So what we're doing here is trying to take a kind of an investigator's, a detective's look at whether or not, number one, God exists, and number two, Christianity is true. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is coming out of some books. I'm not here to sell you books, though. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do instead, like if you want to get a book, we've got them in the bookstore. I'll be happy to sign it, but that's not why I came. I'm going to send you everything you need. I'm going to send you the longer videos from all my sessions. I'm going to send you the PDF files. I'm going to send you the MP3s. I'm going to send you Bible inserts. You're going to have more information than you need. I'll show you how to get that at the very end, okay? If you want to get a book, fine. But what's more important for all of you in this room is that you get ready to make the case for what you believe. And you just need resources sometimes to do that. And that's what we're here to give you. But this morning's talk is going to come out of a book I wrote called God's Crime Scene. What I want to do with you right now is give you a lesson in how to work death scenes. And then I'm going to turn that into the case for God's existence. So let's do a little death scene investigations 101, all right? In order to work a death scene, you have to have a death. So let's just look at a dead body. Here's a guy who's dead laying on the floor. Now the question, of course, is, should I work this as a homicide? It may not even be a homicide. There are 4 ways to die. Only one of them is murder. This could be one of the other 3. Now I'm going to show this tonight in the general session also. Same dead guy, but I'm going to kill him a different way tonight, okay, than I'm going to kill him this morning, all right? So I'll show you how 2 ways you can die here. Now, so far, all I have in this room is a dead guy laying face down. That's it. The question is, how do I explain dead guys laying face down? Well, that's a process we use. I'll teach you the process. It's called abductive reasoning. You ready? We make 2 lists that begin with an E. The first list is a list of evidences. The second list is a list of explanations. Now you compare the evidences to the explanations to figure out what the best explanation is. Well, what do we have in the room so far? Well, we got a dead guy laying face down. How do you explain dead guys laying face down? There are 4 ways. Can you think of 4 ways people die? Go. Suicide is one, yep, for sure. What else? Like a natural heart attack. What else? A murder. One more. Accident. Very good. You guys covered them all. So let's put those on the wall here. Natural, accidental, suicide, and murder. Now, given what we have so far, which of these 4 explanations would be the best? Well, can I cross out any explanations so far, given what I have? What can I cross out? Go. Probably natural, but if he had a heart attack, he would look like that, wouldn't he? What else? Well, if he accidentally took too many pills, he would look like this. If he intentionally took too many pills, he would look like this. If I poisoned him with too many pills, he'd look like that. So right now, I can't cross out anything. Not only is everything as a possible explanation, it's still all reasonable. So let's change our scenario. What if I have a dead guy who's laying on the floor face down, but now he's in a pool of his own blood center torso? Would that make a difference? So let's go back and add this piece of evidence to our list of evidences. And there it goes on the list. Can I cross out anything? Well, what if he had a brain aneurysm, hits the deck, and he bleeds out through his nose? Happens. What's the problem with that? The blood would be over here around his head, wouldn't it? I'm looking for some natural opening in your center torso from which you could, I can't think of that, right? I mean, is it still possible that this is, I guess, but it's not reasonable, so I can cross that one out. Do you see what we just did? We just compared the evidences to the explanations. Can I cross out anything else? I got to kind of roll them over to see what the injury is, right? Would you agree with me? It could be, it depends on the injury. So let's change the scenario. What if I had a dead guy laying face down in a pool of his own blood, only now he suffered a single gunshot wound. And this gunshot wound is an exit wound coming out of his back. That's an exit wound. Now let's go back and add that to our list. Can I cross out anything? Accidental? Well, what if he doesn't know the gun is loaded, he's handling it? That's an exit wound. That would explain the exit wound. I mean, even suicides. People always say, well, if you're going to shoot yourself, wouldn't you do a better job than shooting yourself in the sense? Well, most of the suicides I go to, people are high when they do them. So I see all kinds of crazy suicides. I really can't cross out anything here, given what I have, because all of these are still reasonable. Single gunshot wound, and he could have done that to himself. Or somebody else could have done it to him. Let's go back and change the scenario. What if, in addition to all of these things, I found a note lying on the floor next to his body, and the note is written on a piece of paper that I find elsewhere in the room. It's a pen that I found elsewhere in the room. It's written in his handwriting. His fingerprints and DNA are on the note. Let's put that in place. There it is. Now, if I have this additional piece, would that change anything? I think it would, right? What can I take out now? Right. Now, he may have accidentally shot himself before he intended to shoot himself, but he clearly intended to shoot himself. Write that note. This can come off. Are you guys all convinced this is a suicide now? There's a suicide note. What? How would I explain a suicide note? Well, it's got his fingerprints on it, his DNA, his handwriting. Somebody forced him to write his own suicide note. You've been watching Criminal Minds, haven't you? That's a stupid show, Bob. You do watch it. I know you watch it. Don't deny it now because you're embarrassed that you watch Criminal Minds. Raise your hands so everyone can see that's who watches Criminal Minds right there. Okay. All right, let's change it. Let me try to convince you. What if the note does not have his DNA and fingerprints on it? What if the note is on a piece of paper I can't find anywhere else in the room? It's got an unknown fingerprint, an unknown DNA, and an unknown handwriting on it. What if, how about this? What if he's got multiple gunshot wounds, and they're all entry wounds on his back, not exit wounds? Would that change things? What if there was bloody footprints leading out of the room? Let's do all of that right now. Here we go. Let's add all of those things to our case. There they are. You can tell this is a California murder, can't you? Think about it. Think about it. That's clearly the beach out there somewhere, I'm sure. So we're going to add all of these. This is exit wounds. These are entry wounds, rather. They're multiple gunshot wounds. We've got foreign fingerprints on this. Now, given all of this, let's put this on our list. Now, would you agree that given these evidences, I can cross out suicide? That's a reasonable inference now. A reasonable inference. Okay. We just did something called deductive reasoning. But we also played another game. I don't know if you saw what we just did, so I want to explain it to you. If you're working death scenes and trying to decide if it's a crime scene, we have a simple question we ask. Can you explain everything that's in the room by staying in the room? If you can, it's not a murder. Can you explain everything that's in the room by staying in the room? Let me show you what this means. Let me give it to you graphically a little bit better. So let's say here's our room. Let's reduce it down to a box. Here's our room. He's in the box. Now we're going to play this game of inside or outside the room. If I can explain everything that's in the room by staying in the room, well, for example, I've got a note. Well, it's on paper I find elsewhere in the room. He's got his fingerprints and DNA on it alone. It's his handwriting. He can do that by himself in the room without any help from anybody outside. I can explain that by staying in the room. And let's say somebody says, well, yeah, that's his pistol. He's owned that for years. He keeps it in the safe in the corner of the room. It's only got his fingerprints and DNA on it. Okay, I can explain the gun by staying in the room. And finally, anyone can shoot themselves once without any help from anybody outside the room. I can even explain that by staying inside the room. If I can explain everything that's in the room by staying in the room, it's going to be one of these three. Now, granted, it's not going to be a natural, but it's going to be an accidental or a suicide. But what if I have to go outside the room for the best explanation? If I have to go outside the room, everything shifts. So, for example, hey, it doesn't have his fingerprints. It's not on paper I can find anywhere else in the room. There is no paper like that. It's not his fingerprints, not his DNA, not his handwriting. I got to look for somebody who's the source of that note and the source of the writing on the piece of paper. I got to go outside the room. And, say somebody says, well, look, he's never owned a gun. He hates guns. He's afraid of guns. And sure enough, it's not registered to him. Doesn't have his DNA or fingerprints on it. Now I've got to go outside the room to figure out the source of the gun. And it's hard to shoot yourself multiple times in the back, right? Without any help from somebody else. I've even got bloody footprints that lead outside the room. Clearly the best explanation for these things now is outside the room. And if the best explanation for the stuff that's in the room is a cause outside the room, I'm now in that category. Are we clear? Simple, right? When I first started teaching this to homicide investigators, they're like, oh, that makes it so much easier. Well, no kidding. What are we doing here? These are intruder investigations. We're simply trying to figure out, was there an intruder? Intruders change everything. Intruders are the very thing that turn crime or death scenes into crime scenes. Right? And you might be curious about why somebody would kill themselves or how they could die accidentally, but once you know you've got an intruder, that sense of curiosity you have has to change into a sense of urgency. Well, why? Because the one show that gets it right is not Criminal Minds. It's this boring show. You've probably seen it called The First 48. Have you ever seen that? It's pretty boring, if you ask me. It's just a camera over the shoulder of somebody who is solving homicides in the first 48 hours. Because after the first 48 hours, it gets tougher. My cases are an average of about 20 years old, 20 to 25 years old. It's a lot harder to solve than that. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Why did I go through all this time with you to teach you this principle of inside or outside the room? Well, couldn't you take this principle and apply it to God's existence? What if, for example, the room we were looking at is not this crime scene room? What if the room we were investigating was the entire natural universe? Couldn't I ask the same kinds of questions? Can I explain everything that's in the room by staying in the room? If I can, there's no intruder. Now, what do I have to cook with in the room? All I've got in the room is space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry. That's it. That's all that's in the natural universe. Space, time, matter, physics, chemistry. That's it. But I've got 8 things I think have to be explained in the room. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, folks, but we're living in a universe that has 8 characteristics. Number 1, we're in a universe that begins to exist from nothing. That's right, all space, time, and matter leaps into existence from nothing. That's not what Scripture teaches. Well, it is what Scripture teaches, but it's what the science teaches. That's called Big Bang cosmology. Okay, if you're going to explain the Big Bang, who's the Big Banger? What's the Big Banger? Whatever it is, it can't be space, time, or matter, because those things don't exist until the universe exists. So we're already looking for something non-spatial, non-temporal, temporal, non-material. Also, there's fine-tuning in the universe. We've got to explain that. The universe is incredibly fine-tuned to within a hair's breadth for the existence of carbon-based life like you and me. It doesn't have to be this way, but it happens to be this way. Why? Also, life originates from non-life. Somehow all that stuff in the universe comes to life. Those are called the origin of life studies, OOLs. And they've been doing that for about 50 years. We're not any closer than we ever were to having an answer to that. Not only that, the life that does emerge has signs of design. It appears to be designed. And that's not even controversial. The most ardent atheist I can think of is Richard Dawkins. He's an evolutionary biologist. He'll even agree that all of biology is the pursuit of trying to understand what looks like it has been designed for a purpose, although he denies a designer. Also, you're thinking about this right now. You have to be able to explain your minds. That's different than your brains. Atheists believe in brains, but the atheists that I know who are consistent do not believe in minds. Sam Harris, the very famous atheist who's also a neuroscientist, he denies the existence of mind. He thinks you have a brain but no mind. He also denies the existence of free agency, because under his atheistic worldview, you could have a brain that's responding to physical events, but you don't have a mind that thinks freely. But we think we do have minds. We're thinking about that right now. Is that even true? Also, we happen to exist in a universe that has objective, transcendent moral truths and a standard of righteousness by which we judge something and call it evil. Look, in the end, everyone has to explain these 8 things in the room. I have an equal burden. So people tell you, hey, you're the ones who believe in God. The burden of proof is on you guys. You believe in this invisible thing. Okay, great. You got to show me. You got to make the case. Well, really? That's not how it works, folks. We get to a crime scene. I have stuff in the crime scene. I tell my partners, I think the husband did it. One of my partners says, no, it's not the husband. I think it was his sister who did it. Really? Well, I have to make a case for why I think it's the husband. He has to make a case for why he thinks it's the sister. If you think you can get those 8 things with just physics, chemistry, space, time, and matter, you got a burden of proof. Show me how you get those 8 things. When I started looking at this as a guy who did not believe in God, I thought, wow, if I'm going to explain these 8 things, I got to stay inside of naturalism to do it. But what if there's no explanation in there? What if the best explanation's out here? Well, then I got a problem, right? Because I got evidence of an intruder. The only problem is the intruder is spanning the entire cosmos. And that's why I wrote this book called God's Crime Scene. Not because I think God committed a crime, but because you could work the universe like a crime scene. And it could tell you something. Now we're going to go back to this model, right? We had this model of evidence in the room and explanations. Now we're going to look at the evidence in the universe and try to explain it. We have those 8 pieces we just talked about, and we have 2 possible explanations. One, we stay inside the room. We can only use space, time, matter, evolutionary processes of physics and chemistry. Or we jump outside the room for something extra-natural, supranatural, supernatural. Which is a better explanation? Now, to prove there is a God, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not going to try to go through all 8 pieces of this evidence. So there you go. I just proved to you there is a God, because that would be tough, okay? I teach this class at Biola University, and it takes me 17 hours to go through all 8 pieces. So I'm not going to kill you with 17 hours of stuff. We're just going to do one thing this morning. Just one. We're going to talk about this one. We happen to live in a universe in which life emerged from non-life. Can I explain that by staying inside the room? Or is the better explanation outside the room? Now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I had a case a number of years ago. It was about 3 days before New Year's Eve. Guy gets shot in his workplace. We get there. He's dead on the ground. There's no gun there, but he's got a bullet wound to his head. And we're thinking, this is terrible. You know why it's terrible? Because it's 3 days before New Year's Eve. That's why it's terrible. And we know it's going to take probably 5 days to solve it, so a whole New Year's Eve is going to get messed up, right? And that's really all we're thinking about. I hate to tell you that. We get there and we're like, dang it, this is going to be... But next to his body, there was a cell phone. And the cell phone had a message on it. And I looked at that message and I said, what the heck is that? Do you guys recognize that message? I didn't recognize it. I thought, now it's someone named Rachel. It's right next to his body. And it has this BTI 30. And I thought, was that an accident? Was that like a malfunction from the phone? Did she butt dial that or something? You know, like how did that happen? Or is that a message? Is that really information that he understood? It was. It turns out it was key to the whole case. Here's why. She had been cheating on her husband for about a year with a guy that she really loved, and she really wanted this guy she loved, her boyfriend, to kill her husband before the end of the year. So she told her boyfriend, you need to kill him before the end of the year. This is like back in June. Well, now it's 3 days before the end of the year. He still hasn't done it. So he decides today's the day. And he heads over to this place of business in our city to kill the husband. And sure enough, because it's a holiday week, it's slow. So the husband tells his wife, I'm coming home early. Well, that's going to mess the whole plan up because he's not dead yet, okay? So the wife, Rachel, texts him this message. And when I did a warrant on all of her phone tolls and all of her phone records, I found that she did this a lot. This message, he understood it. It meant, I will be there in 30 minutes. Some of you are like, well, no, I know what that means. Well, I didn't know what that meant. I'll be there in 30 minutes. So I thought, okay, well, why is she doing that? Because that held him in place just long enough for her boyfriend to show up. 15 minutes later, he killed her. So this ended up being really critical to us. Because number one, it gave me, who's the first person I'm going to interview? Rachel, right? It gave me direction, and it gave me also motive, and it gave me all kinds of other things. Just figuring out, is that an accident, or is that information? Well, it turns out there's actually a clue in the universe that solves the mystery of the origin of life that asks the same question. How many of you have had to write papers with your teachers or in English classes where you had to ask and answer these questions? We do the same thing, right, in investigations. We ask, well, how does this information get here? How did this dial on the phone, how did that get there? What was the purpose of it? Where did it come from? How did it make? Why is it there? These are questions we ask, right? The same kinds of questions can be asked about life in the universe, because if you've ever studied your biology, you know what that is, right? What is that? DNA. And these are nucleotides in DNA. There are 4 nucleotides in DNA, a 5th in RNA. And these nucleotides are not random. These nucleotides are in a sequence. They're informative. They're information. They are in a sequence. They're telling a story. Every little machine in your body has been built with this information. Did you know that? That's information in the DNA. It is the longest molecule known to humans. But how did it get here? There's one scholar who's got a solution for this. His name is Stephen C. Meyer. Here's what he says. This is the money line from a very thick book he has called Signature in the Cell. There isn't a single example in the history of the universe or the history of science in which information has ever come from anything other than intelligence. Did you hear what I just said? You can't get information from physics. You can't get information from chemistry. We have only one example in our entire experience historically of where information comes from. It comes from intelligence. If that's information in the DNA, what is the intelligent source for it? Do you see the problem? Let me put it this way. If I was going to teach you information theory, I could put you to sleep pretty fast by reading this book with you. Dr. Werner Gett, he's an engineer in Germany. He's talked about the 5 levels of information. I need you to understand these 5 levels, but if I do it this way, you're going to fall asleep even right now. I can see some of you are tired. That's right, I'm watching you. So, here's how we're going to do this. How many of you have dogs? Raise your hand if you have a dog. Okay, so like, what is the best dog ever bred? It's called a...
Chocolate lab.
Who said it? Corgi. Who said corgi?
Get out of here.
That's right. Every other dog is a mutt, okay? I'm sorry. Whatever you have, it is trash, okay? Forget that. Seriously. You should bring those dogs back to the pound and just bring out the corgis. Corgis, by the way, what are you giving that look for? It's true. Does the Queen of England have any of your dog? No. The Queen of England has 4 of my dog. Corgis. Yeah. 4. Why? Because they are the best dog. Let me introduce you to my dog, okay? This is Bailey, okay? A Welsh Pembroke Corgi. That's right. Everyone say aw. Now, corgis are smart. I'm not sure how smart they really are, but let me just give her an exercise. I'll put a typewriter in front of Bailey, and I will ask her to type something. We're going to determine if it's information. All right? So she types her first sentence. I'll write it on the wall. Here's her first effort. Here we go. Not bad. But what is she saying? I don't know. I can't. But is this information? It is in a sense. I mean, it's complex. What are the odds of her typing that same sequence 2 times in a row? If she could type it twice in a row, you'd be going, dang, that's a smart dog. But is it information? I don't understand. No meaning. What if she could type a pattern? She's so smart she can type TT spacebar over and over and over again. Is that information? Yes. In a sense. But what is she saying? I don't know. The meaning still lacks meaning. What if she could type even more complex patterns? T13T spacebar over and over and over again. Is that information? Yes, kind of. But is that what's in DNA? No. No, DNA is far more. You could get this, though, by staying inside the room of the universe. You can get this by accident. You can get this with some physical processes and laws of physics can produce patterns. Snowflake patterns, crystalline patterns are produced by physics. So you can get these two things by staying inside the room. But that's not what DNA is. DNA is not that. If that's information, it is the lowest level of information. It is given a proper term. It is called statistics. Now, that's kind of what you're thinking of, but it's the name for this level of information. You could get this level of information by staying inside the room, but this is not what DNA is. I'm asking you to put your thinking caps on here for a second. What if Bailey could actually type out words where she could get like 4 or 5 letters together and make a word? She types out this. Not bad. Would you say it's a smart dog? Yeah. But what is she saying? I don't know. But that's pretty good. Now, already you cannot get this by staying inside the room of the natural universe. You can't get that level of complexity and specificity with just physics and chemistry and space, time, and matter. So we're already outside the room. But this is another level of information, and it's called cosyntics. This is not what DNA is, by the way. And we're already outside the room. This is not what DNA is. DNA is a higher level of information than this. Hey, what about this? What if I could type sentences, or letters rather, in the right order and get words, and then I could put words in the right order and get complete sentences? Now, if my dog could do that, you would go, wow, that's a smart dog. We are 2 levels outside what the universe can produce on its own. But this is not what DNA is. This is a level of information called semantics. I now have meaning. I know what she means. She means that Grandpa's eating. Have you ever known anybody who's like learning the English language and they're stuck between these two? Like they have an idea what the words ought to be, but they're not quite sure what order to put them in? I was in a Thai food restaurant in Malibu, California, and I walked into the washroom, and this is what the sign was on the washroom wall. It said, "Please do not throw paper wiping hand down toilet." Now, I think I understand what they mean. Not my hand down, the paper. Don't throw the paper down the toilet. I get it. The paper you use to wipe your hands. Don't throw it down. I get it. But do you see they're kind of stuck between 2 and 3? This is like a 2.7, right? Somewhere between cosyntics and semantics. And this is not what DNA is. DNA is higher than this. What if Bailey could type out not just a sentence, but a request? That's right, a request. She wants Grandpa to do something for her, so she makes an ask. That would be another level of information. Here she just wants Grandpa to get up and feed her. That, by the way, is called pragmatics. And if she expects Grandpa to get up and feed her because what she's really after is a walk, and she knows that Grandpa walks her after he feeds her, so she's asking this knowing she's going to get something else in return, that's a whole other level of information called apodetics. So where is DNA? We can get this by staying in the room. We can't get this, or this by staying in the room. This requires intelligence beyond physics and chemistry to get those sentences. Well, where is DNA? Well, one way we can test it is to ask this question. If we just look at the top and the bottom, the lowest level of information and the highest level of information, one way to test it is to ask the question, what does Bailey mean? No idea. Oh, I get it. Another way to test it is to ask this question. If I make a small modification, does the meaning change? So for example, if I come up here and I remove something, does the meaning change? No. It still doesn't make any sense. It's a low level of information, the lowest level. But I think you know where I'm headed with this, right? This is why we always say that commas do save lives, right? Because down here at the bottom, this is an entirely different proposal. Now, if I make one small change in this sequence of letters, just take out this comma, everything is going to change in the meaning, right? Sweet Bailey who wants to get fed is now evil Bailey who wants to eat Grandpa. Do you see the difference? Let's go to our Billy the Kid illustration here. So here's Billy the Kid, or maybe this is Jesse James. I forget which one he is.
Now, this is his DNA structure. Of course, if it was his real DNA structure, it would go off in that direction about 10 miles and off in this direction about 20 miles. But the point is, it's long. And it turns out any small modification, if I take one of the nucleotides and I exchange it, well, I'll tell you that there is some self-correction in DNA, and it'll fight with you a little bit, but eventually it'll give in. And something will change about Billy. His forehead, his nose, his ears. There will be some change in meaning. And that's what we discover at the highest level of information. Small modifications end up in a change in meaning. This is how we know that DNA is not at the lowest level. You can't get it by staying in the room. It's at the highest level of information. And this is why an agnostic who's an atheist named Paul Davies, who's at Arizona State University, puts it this way. He says we're still left with the mystery of where biological information comes from. If the normal laws of physics can't inject information, and he doesn't think they can, he knows they can. And if we're ruling out miracles, which he does because he's not a believer, then how does life be predetermined and inevitable rather than a freak accident? How is it possible to generate random complexity and specificity together in a law-like manner? We're always back to that same basic paradox. Now look, for those who want to stay inside the room, there are a couple of ways to stay inside the room to get information. One, you get it by accident. There's not enough time in the history of the universe to get the information in DNA by accident. Or you get it by law, some physical property of physics that forces information, has no choice, it has to emerge. But there is no law of physics that'll get you information. And by the way, that burden's not on us. If the atheist says, I can get information one of these two ways, then show me how you're doing it. And by the way, that's where they're stuck. They can't get information. They've been trying for 50 years. But of course, if you could, you'd be inside the room of the universe. Now, here are the problems if we're trying to stay inside the room. I didn't even talk about this, but you can't use chance as an explanation because you have a chicken and egg problem too. So let me just run it by you real quick. All the proteins in your body are being used like Legos to build the molecular machines in every one of your cells. Those machines are built from proteins. The proteins are built from amino acids. How do we get proteins? There is a machine in your body called a ribosome machine that is assembling the amino acids into proteins. That's right, it's creating the Legos. But what do you think the ribosome machine is made out of? Legos, proteins. In other words, the machine that creates the proteins starts off being created by proteins. You have a chicken and egg problem. What came first, the ribosome or the proteins? You need ribosomes to get proteins, but you need proteins to get ribosomes. See the problem? There's a ton of those, by the way, in biology. And the second problem you have is that there's no physical law anybody can show us. Now, there's a third way to get information. A third way. What if it's just from an intelligent mind? A mind that is the creative source of all information. That would explain the information we have, but that requires an explanation outside the room. Because we know we can't use space, time, and matter. That's all that's in the room. Now we're jumping into something that's outside, a supernatural mind that is the source of information in DNA. Remember we talked about these questions we ask in investigations? Well, do you know if I work in an investigation, a murder scene, and I just ask those questions, nobody goes to jail. You know that, right? Because those questions are not enough. I can figure out how this happened, when it happened, why it happened, where it happened, but until I ask the most important question, who did it? Nobody hits the bucket. Nobody goes to jail. These are important questions, but this is the most important question when you're working a crime scene. Who did it? Now you'll notice that science is willing to ask these questions, but science will never ask the most important question. Well, why not? Because we're doing science, Jim. We don't ask who questions in science. No, I get that. You only ask those questions. I get that. But why do you only ask those questions? Because that's the rule. We just don't ask who. Okay, I understand it's the rule, but why is it the rule? Do you see how it's kind of arbitrary that they won't ask a who question in science? All of you in this room, I want to challenge you to go into the sciences. I have two sons. One is a cop. He works at my agency. The other is an anesthesiologist. His interest originally was in biochemistry. I want to encourage all of you as Christians to go into the hard sciences, because you will find God there. You don't be afraid of those sciences. Those sciences demonstrate the existence of God. The only difference between you and the other guy is you're willing to ask that question. And a lot of people you go to school with are not willing to ask that question. Does that make sense? Here's how Warner Gitt puts it. You got to have a who in order to get information. Why? Because a necessary requirement for generating meaningful information is the ability to select from alternatives. That's right. When you write a paper, you pick the words you're going to put in the paper. You put information in your paper. Why? Because you select the words you're going to use, and you deselect the words you're not going to use. You're choosing between alternatives. That's what creative minds do. That DNA is a selection of nucleotides against alternatives. And it demonstrates the existence of a mind that has to be there to select between alternatives. That's why a creative mind outside the room is the best explanation for the information we see inside the room. Got it? And we started with this model. Inside or outside. I told you that intruders change everything. This is an intruder investigation. Intruders are what turn this into crime scenes. I also told you that if you have evidence of an intruder, you need to get after it. You need to have a sense of urgency, not just a sense of curiosity. You guys need to have a sense of urgency. You came to this camp for a week. Some of you came here, you're not even believers. You had altar calls on the nighttime talks, right? Some of you still aren't believers. Some of you will say you're a believer to get through this with your friends, so you can go back to your regular lives and not be believers. I get it. I was not a believer until I was 35. But once I discovered this was true, I am all in. Because it changes everything. And it means we have a short period of time to communicate this to others. Now, this is the illustrations from the book, so you'll wonder why they're illustrations. But these are the 8 things that I think are best explained by jumping outside the room. You cannot get any of these things by staying inside the room. All of them require an explanation outside the room. And that means we have a suspect profile. By the way, if I get someplace, for those of you who maybe have never thought about murders, if I get to a place, a crime scene, I know something about the bad guy before I ever arrest him, before I ever meet him. Because I can tell something about him just from the evidence in the scene. Right? So for example, if a guy is killed while he's working at a gas station and the register is open, and he's been shot once in the head, that's one kind of suspect. If the same guy is killed in his bedroom, stabbed 70 times in the groin, different kind of killer. Would you agree? Which of those 2 killers probably knows my victim intimately? The second one. So now, instead of looking at anyone who could have done it, I am narrowing my search to just those people who knew him intimately. Do you see how much easier the second kind of murder is to work? It's a lot easier to work. Crime scenes tell you something about your suspect. And here, I think we know something about our suspect from the crime scene. And by the way, who fits that description? It's not Mick Jagger, okay? You guys know who Mick Jagger is? For all the old people in the room, Mick Jagger was a rock star with the Rolling Stones. He was always in jail. He is not my suspect, though, because he can't explain these 8 things. I'm looking for somebody who has this description. And how do I know he has that description? Because I get that from the actual pieces of evidence. This is what would be required to get this. This is what's required to get that. And guess what? This is not Mick Jagger. He can't fit the description. But there is one suspect who fits the description perfectly. And did you notice I have not opened a single page of Scripture? You can become a theist believing God's existence without... By the way, this doesn't even make a case for the Christian God. We're going to do that tonight. I can believe this as a Muslim. It points to God. But which God? That's still the next question. But do you see how I got here? You could never have told me, oh, I know that God exists because in Romans it says, don't quote me out of Romans. I don't want to hear your stupid Romans. I didn't want to hear any of that. You show me how this scene is explained. And then I was in. Okay, I get it. I knew I couldn't come backwards from this. I knew I was at least stuck being a theist, believing in God. But what kind of God? Now, I'll show you a guy I arrested a number of years ago. We did this trial in the O.J. Simpson courtroom with Robert Shapiro, actually, who was O.J. Simpson's attorney. He was his attorney also. And this guy killed a woman in 1979. He was 27 years old when he killed her. We convicted him in 2015. So it was all those years later. Now, how did we convict him? Well, we had different forms of evidence. We had some eyewitnesses' statements, weren't great, but they were okay. We had some behaviors that he exhibited back when he was a young man. We had some evidence at the crime scene, and we had some statements that he made that were pretty compelling. Now, when you have, by the way, these are completely different kinds of experts. This is going to be eyewitness analysis. This is going to be behavioralists we brought in. These are forensic chemists and scientists, and this is what's called forensic statement analysis. All of these experts said, you know what, I don't know anything about what he does, but I'm over here and I haven't analyzed his statement. I think he's the guy. I don't know anything about what he does, but I've analyzed this evidence. I think he's the guy. When four completely different kinds of experts point to the same guy, having no idea what the other one is doing, you've got a good inference. That's why this is my guy. And why do I show you that? Because now we're going to shift over. Here's the case for God's existence. It turns out that these are four completely different categories. Two are entirely cosmological. Who are expert witnesses here? Cosmologists, astrophysicists. Those are the ones who I am reading in order to get this data. Who are the experts here? These are biologists and biochemists. Who are the experts over here? These are neuroscientists and philosophers. Who are the experts over here? These are ethicists. By the way, this guy has no idea what this guy's doing, but his evidence points to this. This guy has no idea what this guy is doing, but his evidence points to this. Again, four different kinds of evidence, 8 different pieces. They are all best explained by the same suspect. Probably a good inference. Let me just show you quickly what defense attorneys do. Oh, Jim, I can explain these 8 pieces a different way. I can think of 4 possible explanations for that, and 3 for that, and 3 for that, and 4 for that, and 4 for that, and 3 for that, and they go on and on and on and on. So, Jim, there are other ways of explaining the evidence. Well, no, duh. And by the way, none of those explanations work. And if you think that's not true, this guy will tell you that his explanation is better than his explanation. He says his explanation is better than his explanation, and none of those 4 guys agree. And whatever explanation they're offering for this, over here they're going, nah, it doesn't work over here. None of those causes will get you that. Whatever gets you this will not get you this. Whatever gets you this will not get you that. Well, there's another way to explain those same 8 pieces. What if there's one common causal factor that'll get you all of it? Oh, well, which is more reasonable? I have to be incredibly lucky with some unrelated array of explanations, or God. Which is more reasonable? Have you seen this movie called A Theory of Everything? We've been trying to work on a theory of everything. It unites macro physics with quantum physics. We would call it a theory of everything. One theory that explains everything in the universe. Well, I'm here to tell you today, there is a theory of everything. It is called God. God is the theory of everything. He will explain everything in physics, chemistry, everything about mind, everything about morality. Everything can be explained, but they don't want to ask a who question, so they never find him. You guys in this room have asked who questions. And that's why we know that this is the best explanation. Now I'm going to show you how to get the video that has everything we talked about today, plus the other 7 pieces. This is our website, coldcasechristianity.com. You're simply going to go to this hidden page. If you've got a phone, you're taking one picture or you're writing one thing down, this is it. This is all you have to do. This is just type this into your browser. You cannot search for this because you won't find it. It's a hidden page. And it's just set up for you guys. So you get on there, you sign up, and then I'm going to send you everything from today's talk. Does that make sense? Now, tonight, we're going to talk about the evidence for the resurrection. Look, folks, I ask this question no matter where I go. Why are you guys Christians? And I tell pastors before I ask it, I'm going to give you their answers in advance, because I already know their answers. And I'm going to give them to you in the order in which they're going to give them to me. And I'm right about 85% of the time. Here's what I ask. Why are you guys Christians? Here's what you guys typically say. Number 1 answer, by far, outnumbers all the rest. I was raised as a Christian. I've been a Christian all my life. My parents were Christians. Some of you right now, if you think about it, that probably would have been your answer. Not a bad answer, but that's the answer I get. The second answer is experiential. I've seen something. I've had some experience that demonstrated Christianity is true for me. A prayer was answered. I had an experience at a camp. Something that I can point to that demonstrates that Christianity is true. Good answer. That's the second answer I get. Third answer is kind of like the second answer. I used to be a jerk, and then I met Jesus. I'm not so much a jerk anymore. He changed my life in some way. I'm okay with those answers. But in my life, I knew two kinds of people. All atheists in my family, except my dad, remarried in the 1960s to a woman who is Mormon. And I have 6 half-brothers and sisters, all raised Mormon. If I ask my Mormon family, why are you guys Mormons? Guess what their answers are? The exact same answers. I challenge you to go to any ward in America, any Mormon ward, and ask that question. Your answers sound like their answers. Now, you don't think Mormonism is true, right? It's not. But why do your answers sound like theirs? That's got to stop. Unless you want to be considered, because the culture looks at that and says that's crazy. They're looking at you and saying that's crazy too. Why? Well, their answers are exactly the same. We got to change all that. Now when someone asks you, well, why do you believe God exists? Give them an answer. Why do you think Christianity is the true view of God? Give them an answer. I want your answers in the future to be, I am a Christian because it's true. And I can show you why. That's the answer that survives in university, by the way. That's really the only answer that survives in university by the statistics. Let's pray. Father, we know that we have been lazy at times, and we need to do a better job of just knowing why this is true and being able to communicate it to others. Would you help us to be able to share the truth in a way that is compelling? But first, help us to understand it. Help us to take another step. Help us not to be lazy. Help us to make this a priority. Help us to think about you, and in the way we think about you, to worship you with our minds. We pray this in Jesus' name. And everyone here says, Amen. I'll see you guys tonight.